morning. It's Thursday, October 24th, 2024, and you are listening to the TED Manila Information Show, TMI for short, where we bring you way too much information. We will bring you everything from news to politics, music, culture, lifestyle, fad diets, what the kids are up to, what middle-aged people are up to, what infants are up to, and they're the absolute worst, what cats are up to, the taboo, the occult, anything and everything goes, because you can never really have too much information. Of course, This is your warning, your Surgeon General's warning. If you are out for a straight-laced, button-down news program, tune away, run away, turn this off. This show is not for you. However, if there's stuff that you want to hear about, maybe you're willing to hear some stuff that you never needed to know, keep it right here on the TMI show with me, Ted Rall, and my co-host, Manila Chan. We'll have a few laughs along the way. We're here live every Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time for about an hour. Well, we're trying for aim for exactly an hour. Yeah. Sometimes we can go long. So anyway, be sure to like and follow the show. Otherwise, there will be no show. The show will not go on. But the show is going on for now. The TED Manila Information Show starts right now.
Well, good morning, everybody. What are we? On Thursday? We're Thursday now? Yes, it is Thursday. You know, when you work from home now, Ted, even though I should say when you volunteer from home, you kind of lose track of the days, honestly. I don't I oftentimes, by the way, you're muted, Ted. I don't know exactly the date or day because it all just kind of is a blob together, and I'm working on multiple stories and multiple projects, and I'm like, okay, I should probably rely on the calendar more often.
I am, I understand that feeling, but I'm one of those people, like, if you came to my home, you would find a clock in almost every single room.
I have that too.
I even have a little travel clock in my bathroom. I always like to know what time it is. There's very few places where, and so one of the things
I know the time about I just don't know the day.
Ever since my mom died, there's a lot of things I miss about her. And one of the minor ones is that she used to send me wall calendars. Like, she'd forget. She'd send me like 3 or 4 wall calendars every year. One was always France themed. It had like sort of, pictures of beautiful places in France. Then she would send me like a cartooning one, like maybe a Far Side or something like that. Or and then I had my fellow cartoonist Andy Singer, who does a amazing comic strip called No Exit. He makes his own calendar every year, and he would send me his wall calendar. Somehow he did. I don't know if he didn't do one last year, but anyway, I am devoid of wall calendars is the whole point here of this diatribe. So I always have to, I always know what time it is, but I just don't always know what day it is.
Same. I used to rely heavily on the old school like paper daily planners that I would carry everywhere, but now it's like my phone or the Google Calendar, and I guess not having the calendar on the wall makes a difference. And I don't know how everyone else has adjusted to it, and I thought it was just me, but I don't know. But here
I think I'm going to have to buy one. I mean, it's that season, right? The wall calendars are out now, and there's probably never been more of them, or funnier ones, or more interesting ones. So it's time to tune in. I mean, I got to like spring the $15 or whatever and just get one.
I just go to Dollar Tree, Ted. I just buy those $1 Dollar Tree, which is now $1
near where you live.
Yeah, there's several Dollar Trees here.
Really? Because I read that like Dollar Tree and Dollar General, they have metrics where they only locate in places where the economy sucks, like where unemployment's over a certain level.
That makes sense.
And then if a place starts to gentrify, like in the country, they close the Dollar General because they're like, this place isn't going to work anymore.
No, It's really popular because this is like I'm in the middle of suburbia, and I guess the neighborhood I have moved into, I would probably be classified as one of the gentrifiers,
Yeah,
I
for
suppose.
sure.
So, where I'm at, there's 3 Dollar Trees within a 2-mile radius of my home. So
Wow.
that tells you, yeah,
I
that
mean, yeah,
tells
that
you a
means that
lot.
officially you live in the land of Poe.
Yes,
Hmm.
technically,
Hmm.
but poor for the DC Metro is
Hmm.
defined very differently than poor middle of America, right?
Sure, sure.
So like you can't buy a 3-bedroom ranch. Well, we call it ranch style back home in California, but here they call them ramblers. You can't buy a 3-bedroom
Ramblers. To me, a
rambler. That's what
Rambler
they call 'em here.
is a 1960s car, like a
I
Dodge
thought,
Rambler.
yeah, I
The
call those homes
1966 Dodge Rambler. It's
like
what's
a three
next.
3-bedroom, 1.5 bath rambler, what the realtors out here call it, is
Hmm.
in my neighborhood north of 650 for a
Yeah,
modest house.
yeah,
But
that's pricey. I'm surprised that
yeah,
a house. I'm really surprised that any place that has property values like that also has Dollar Trees.
yeah, that's and so
That's
they're
very. I've never heard of that.
they're trying to get rid of our local the Dollar Tree that's closest to my house. They're trying to get rid of that whole little plaza that's been there for, decades and decades. Because what else? They wanna make room for $1,000,000 housing. Because just up the road from me, same thing, they've, like, bought up this old, I don't know, just a bunch of empty vacant lots, land, and they have developed right up the street from me, $1,000,000 micro, like, mini mansions that have no land, that are, like,
Mm.
right next to each other where you can reach out and touch your neighbor's bathroom window,
Yeah.
but they're single family homes.
Hmm.
So the neighborhood is changing, and it didn't look like this when I first moved here, close to a decade ago. So, you know, that's why the Dollar Trees are still there. That's where I shop. I'm still, I come from Poe. I haven't changed, even if, I become white collar, I haven't really changed too much in my taste because that's, the majority of my life is
Well,
spent
can you be white collar?
working class.
Isn't white collar a type of job? Like, can you be white collar? You could be white collar and you could be rich and not be white collar, I guess is my point. Like,
Yes, of
doesn't white
course.
collar kind of imply like banking or
Yes.
insurance,
People, soft hands.
advertising?
Remember the conversation I had with
Yes.
you and Scott the other day? Soft hands people. If I was anybody else, I'd be kicking down your door right now, Ted. That's
Yes.
an inside joke.
Yeah, we know that joke.
But I think I refer to it interchangeably as like white collar being middle to upper middle class, or even rich. I mean, you could be rich white collar, but you can also be
Well,
blue
you can be
collar
rich.
and
You
rich.
can absolutely be rich in blue collar. I mean, you
Yeah,
could have won the lottery. You could have a successful blue collar job.
plumbing business.
Yeah,
Yeah, like we
absolutely.
talked about the other day with Scott. So yeah, so I use it
Meth sales.
interchangeably. That too. Wait, that's a whole different conversation when I worked in the automotive industry. And you'd be surprised at how many people that had shit credit, or what we consider ghosts in credit, that want to come buy like a Yukon Denali, which was the luxury SUV of the era of the early 2000s, who, I helped them with that. The strippers, the drug dealers, we call them street pharmacists in California, but they all need a sweet ride, Ted.
Yes.
And it was, not in a great neighborhood as well, because that's where I'm from. But so yeah, back to this whole thing is where the area I'm in, even though I'm literally in the fallout zone of the White House, if we're a nuclear disaster,
Mm.
just over the 14th Street Bridge, not far from the White House, 10 years ago, I would say, this neighborhood would be considered hood, but it has since kind of gentrified. But some of the remnants
Well,
remain,
you'll
like
know once the
color.
Dollar Tree is like,
I know.
then
I
you'll
want it to
know.
stay. I want it to stay. I want the local taquerias to stay. I want the papusas. I want them to stay.
That's only going to happen with commercial rent control, which is something very few cities have. I'm a huge fan of them, fan of it. They used to have it. I don't know if they still do in Portland, Oregon, when Portland was still
Wow.
interesting and weird. And it allows experimentation. You know, I mean, when I first moved to New York in the early '80s, the rents were super low because the city was a disaster, and so there was a lot of strange little stores, like little boutiques and junk stop shops and all that sort of
Oh,
thing.
yeah, I like that.
And you know, you could do that because you didn't have to.
It keeps it eclectic.
You didn't have to make, you know, your $80,000 a month, rent storefront rental bill
Right.
the way that you do now. So that's why everything's changed now. And
Yeah. And
it
George
sucks.
Carlin talked about it 20 years ago.
Oh yeah, for sure.
The strip malling of America. And
It's a bad
I
thing.
don't want to do that.
Hey, we
It
should
is
do
a
some
bad thing.
headlines.
We should. But anyway, that is a whole different conversation that you and I should talk about. It's like the gentrifying and strip malling of America, because it has done away with the character of this country. And then you and I have talked about this on Countdown, I believe, when the fact that Krispy Kreme opened its first branch in Paris, like downtown Paris. Like, what the freak, man? Paris has like the best baked goods you can ever imagine tasting, and we're going to go open a Krispy Kreme in Paris.
Well, San Francisco used to have laws. The first time I went to San Francisco, I believe, was in the late 1980s. And I was told, it was lore. I don't know if it was true or not, but the lore was the chain stores were illegal in the zoning. Like, in other words, if a store had a certain number of branches or more, or a restaurant, then like they couldn't open anymore. So let's say, you might have like a macro chain, like, let's say you have a successful, Mexican restaurant, and you open another one. Like here in New York, we have like Rosa Mexicana. There's a few of them. It's like, so, but once you got like the fourth one, like, no. Or if you were like Starbucks, no. And they changed that, obviously, but, you could just tell everything's going to hell. I mean, living in an urban center is all about change, far more than in rural areas where things don't change as quickly or as much. But you just tell certain things are really bad. Like New York, why do we have why does New York now have a Home Depot on 23rd Street? Like, why? Why?
Wow.
Fucking Home Depot. We have hardware stores, great hardware stores all over the city.
Well, yeah, that's definitely, I think, for a day that we have like a theme day, that needs to be one of them, is like the strip malling of America, the farewell to all of these independent mom and pop businesses.
This all goes back at least 100 years too. I mean, Sherwood Anderson, the author who did Winesburg, Ohio, during the Depression, he was hired by the WPA to go around and take photos of dying small town America. It's called Hometown, and it's a book of essays and photos that he took. And it's amazing. But it's the beginning of the end of like the traditional small town America. Yeah. It's not a new thing, I mean, and we could stop it. We could decide as a society. Anyway,
it's a shame. All right, let's get to headlines.
Let's do it. We have a lot.
Let's pop this up there. If I can,
we've got like 3 minutes per headline left.
I know. We'll speed through this. Okay. So I'm putting this up there because, I mean, Bill Gates is not talking about it on camera, or else I'd pull up his video. But Bill Gates privately has said that he has backed Kamala Harris with $50 million in donations, approximately, give or take a couple bucks here and there. Mr. Gates said in a statement to the New York Times that, quote, "This election is different," reflecting a significant change. Yes, significant change in his political strategy. Mr. Gates said he has made his donation to Future Forward, the main outside fundraising group supporting Harris, according to people briefed on this matter. Mr. Gates has talked about his pro-Harris donation with his peers, including Mike Bloomberg, the former New York City mayor, and a major supporter of the Future Forward Fund, who has considered a similarly sized gift to of the people briefed on this matter.
Isn't it? What is she going to do with that money? It's less than 2 weeks before the election.
Well, from what I understand, if you don't spend the money from your campaigns, then it kind of goes into your slush fund.
That's true. She could use it next time.
So, Mr. Gates' donation.
There would not be a next time. She loses. There's not going to be a next time.
Mr. Gates' donation went specifically to Future Forward's nonprofit arm, Future Forward USA Action, which is a 501c4, like explosion, like
Japanese
explosive
gaming
C4.
company. Future Forward USA Action.
It does. The name is so bad. It's almost as corny as Ted Manila Info Show.
Almost.
It's a dark money organization, so it does not disclose its donors. So any contribution Mr. Gates has made will actually never appear in public filings. In a statement response to this report, Mr. Gates did not explicitly address the donation or offer a technical, what we think of as an endorsement of Harris in the race, but he keeps stressing that he's bipartisan and that he keeps saying this election is different. No.
So we're having a billionaire off, right, between him and Musk.
Yeah, no, dude. It is not different. And
well, maybe it's different. Even if it were different, who can believe it's different when every election is always different, right? The little man, the little Democrat who cried different.
Right. This is not different. It doesn't work for me, is all I'm saying. We know he's always donated money. Everybody knows this. And if it's not directly to political super PACs, he's donated by way of like funding journalism schools, by funding, like independent outlet or not independent, funding outlets that don't, that are supposed to be 501c3s, that are nonprofit organization journalism or whatever. So he's always manipulated elections for as long as he's been Bill Gates, the billionaire. So that's that. All right, let's move over to this guy here.
Into his tenure.
Let's not hear him. So that right there, Keir Starmer, I think you guys already know, Donald Trump's campaign has accused Britain's Labour Party, chaired now by Keir Starmer, of blatant interference in the U.S. elections after volunteers from this party traveled to the U.S. to campaign for his opponent, Kamala Harris. Campaigning while foreign isn't necessarily illegal per se, just, because you're a foreign national. But the Trump campaign's complaint with the U.S. election authorities suggests the Labour Party funded the travel, which would then make it unlawful. A LinkedIn post by a Labour Party organizer had promised to sort the volunteer people's housing. So if travel and housing is actually backed by the party officially, then that might be a violation of election laws here in the United States. So this isn't a new thing. British volunteers have campaigned here in the U.S. Labor has always supported Democratic candidates. Tories have stumped for Republicans. The head of Lettuce, UK PM for 5 minutes, Liz Truss, has stumped for Trump before in the past, as has the Reform Party leader, Nigel Farage. So this, it's happened, but it has to be on their own dime. That's the catch. So the incident raises two issues. They say if Trump wins, it could irritate relations between the White House and the UK's current government, which I don't personally think is a bad thing. Prime Minister Keir Starmer doesn't think it would interfere. But I would beg to differ, because I think Trump often has axes to grind, and he says it outright. So is it election interference anyway? I don't know, beyond the way we classify it, Ted, beyond directly altering votes or, tallies, hacking campaigns has been alleged by election,
it's influence.
Experts.
It's not interference.
Right. But that's what they said about 100 Facebook posts by like a Russian troll farm, right? Like so this is actual people on the ground.
They called that interference.
Right. Which is why I'm saying it's like hypocrisy match. All right. How about this one here?
Lies. Yeah.
Well.
By the way, is it just me, or does Keir Starmer sound like the lead singer of a death metal band?
I think. Well, I don't know about a death metal, but definitely a British rock band. Or the Starmers.
Like a right-wing band. It sounds like,
I think the name the Starmers would be good.
I don't know. I'm fight with you about that. All right.
I don't know.
The Starmers.
I'm wearing a band shirt today. Stone Temple Pilots. There.
Ooh, nice.
It's great art. I love this cover art. Is like one of my favorites.
That art. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, great cover art. All right, next topic.
I know that's like 1970s Chinese propaganda art.
Love it. It's beautiful, in my opinion. All right. How about here? Next story. The Ukrainian conflict will end in the last quarter of 2025. There's an expiration date now, Ted. This is stated in the updated forecast of the IMF, the International Monetary Fund. So they have given us an expiration date. So I don't know if Volodymyr Zelensky stays in place until the last quarter of 2025, but one more year of this war is what the IMF says. I don't know. Let's see what they say. They say the IMF expects the fighting to continue over the next year, putting pressure on Ukraine's public spending, and therefore there will be a need for additional funding. Quote, in the updated baseline scenario, the war will come to naught. What kind of language? The war will come to naught only in the last quarter of 2025, which will have a strong inhibitory effect on the economy during the year. But Ukraine will be able to maintain moderate economic growth, the document says. That's quoted by the Strana newspaper.
They're literally saying that the war is bad for the economy.
Huh. How strange.
Maybe,
it's really
maybe
good
blowing up natural gas pipelines is bad for the economy.
It's probably bad too. As the EA Daily reported, Ukraine's next agreement with the IMF is not an economic victory at all, as they are trying to present it in Kiev, but only plunges the country into an even bigger debt hole from which there is no way out yet. No, duh. Like, you don't have to have an economics degree to know that, because they have no economy in Ukraine. Like, since the fall of the Soviet Union in 1991, the Ukrainians have not been able to turn a corner. Like, their manufacturing sector is down. The only thing that they really had was agriculture, but how many people can you employ in that field?
Well, and there's no really know what their economy would be, because the corruption is so rampant. They're ranked like number 167th as most transparent by Transparency International. They're an incredibly corrupt country, and so who even knows, what
literally up
economic GDP could be
4 years ago?
in a country without that wasn't rotten to the core.
Up until, I would easily say, 5 years ago, Ted, the New York Times was writing articles about Ukraine being the most corrupt country in all of Europe.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, and a lot of that's all part of what's, the Ukrainians weren't going to win anyway, but, a lot of their, who knows how many of those weapons are being sold on the dark web or stolen by, corrupt military officials. It happens in every war, but it's happening a lot in Ukraine.
Have you heard yet, very recently, it might have happened in the past 24 or 36 hours or so, that I don't remember if it was Hezbollah or Hamas, but one of their spokespeople was kind of sarcastically joking that they were saying, thanks to the Ukrainians and Volodymyr Zelensky for us to have, these longer range weapons. That's basically implying, thank you, US, and thank you, Ukraine, because we have these weapons to fight Israel because of the US and Ukraine. So how did those weapons we
call this gray market. Things, well, every now and then, an attack falls off a truck, and
Can I buy them on eBay? Is it on Etsy? Is it
it's not that far removed from that.
Where's Hamas getting them?
Yeah, you can buy them on the dark web. Weapons are. That's the thing. It's like there's been fascinating studies about like how weapons dumps during a conflict will have repercussions in conflicts for many years to come. There's a guy in England. He's a crazy. He's not a Nazi, but he's like a collector of Nazi ephemera. He has probably the most extensive collection of it. He literally went, when they were tearing down the prison in Germany where Hitler wrote Mein Kampf in the 1920s, he went and got the cell and he has the cell at his. So he's this rich guy. Anyway, the point is, one of the things he has is an old Nazi tank. Apparently, they're hard to come by because a lot of them were destroyed because, Germany lost. So, but guess where he got it? It was a Phalangist militia tank that he got in the Middle East. So the tank made its way to the Middle East and fought in numerous conflicts and was repainted over and over. And then it fell into this guy's hands in like the 80s. So the point is that, like all the weapons that the U.S. dumped into Afghanistan during the anti-Soviet struggle of the Mujahideen, those Stinger missiles, they're around. They're not necessarily in Afghanistan.
Yeah. Well, there, as we all know, obviously I'm being sarcastic, that there has been a lot of conversation, not on mainstream media, obviously, but there are people that have come forward for the last 3 years since the conflict in Ukraine began that almost immediately, since the first batch of Western arms went there, that it immediately, half of them got sold elsewhere.
Shrinkage.
Packages get lost, like Amazon loses stuff.
I hate to be the person, by the way, who, speaking of Nazis, I'm going to be the time Nazi here. We got 2 more stories to get through with 3 minutes to do it.
But I think it's a funny story. But this conversation, or this quote rather, came from a guy called Mykola Azarov, the former Ukrainian prime minister, who talks about it on his own Telegram channel. So it's not just us spreading Russian propaganda. It comes from a Ukrainian.
We do not receive a single ruble from Russia.
No.
Rubles are welcome, but no, we're not getting.
Yeah, I wish we had some rubles. But
Bring
anyway,
them.
all right.
More rubles.
Next story. This one hits home for Ted. The head of the LA Times editorial board has apparently just all upped and resigned on Wednesday after the paper's owner quashed a presidential endorsement for Vice President Kamala Harris. In an interview with Columbia Journalism Review, Mariel Garza, who held the title, the title editorial's editor, said she had quit because she, quote, "I want to make it clear that I am not okay with us being silent. In dangerous times, honest people need to stand up. This is how I'm standing up." Ms. Garza said that the editorial board had planned to endorse Harris, but Dr. Patrick Soon-Shiong, right there, the billionaire owner of the LA Times, decided this month the newspaper would not make any endorsement for president. The paper did not explain to readers why it was not issuing an endorsement. So
they don't explain. They don't explain things to their readers. That's a whole thing with them.
It's an Asian culture thing, Ted. Okay.
Well, even before Dr. Pat owned this rag, they were like that.
So Ms. Garza submitted her resignation letter to the paper's executive editor, Terry Tang, who oversees both the newsroom and the opinion department. Ms. Tang came to the paper after previously serving as the editor at the New York Times for 20 years. Dr. Soon-Shiong, who bought the Times in 2018 for $500 million,
like an idiot,
pushed back on Garza's version of events in a social media post yesterday. He said that the editorial board had not followed through on a directive to, quote, draft a factual analysis of all the positive and negative policies by each candidate during their tenures at the White House and how these policies affected the nation. With this clear and nonpartisan information side by side, our readers could decide who would be worthy of being president for the next 4 years, he said. Instead of adopting this path, he suggested the editorial board choose to be silent and accept their decision. And Ms. Garza responded in a text to the New York Times saying what he outlines in that tweet is not an endorsement or even an editorial. So, yeah, Ted, I don't think papers should really endorse, because if you're supposed to be a journalistic outlet, you're supposed to be nonpartisan. Not just bipartisan.
You have to understand this is a vestige. It's a historical relic, right? When newspapers exploded in the late 18th and early 19th centuries in the United States, they were all partisan. the purpose of newspapers was partisan, and they had names like the Arizona Republic and the Arkansas Democrat for reasons, right? And so there's definitely the idea that a newspaper would endorse candidates and that presumably readers would care about a newspaper's endorsements was, is kind of old fashioned, and it's just like
passe.
It's a little bit passe. I mean, but that said, okay, so I just think, first of all, I just want to say I don't applaud necessarily the editorial board's decision to endorse Harris. I mean, to me, Harris and Trump are the same, but it's like, but I do applaud a resignation on principle. There haven't been a lot of those in a long time. And, I'm tired of people saying like, well, what could you do? This is what you do. If you really feel like you've been screwed and you want to make a splash and you want to, say, look, fuck you guys, I quit. You should, we need to see more of that in government. We need to see more of it in the media and elsewhere. So good for her. She felt strongly about this. It's not my battle, but it's hers. And she cared about it. But for the readers of the LA Times, it is a reminder of the experience that I had. The previous owner of the LA Times was the LAPD pension fund, who sold it to Dr. Pat, and the LAPD pension fund had me fired and smeared by the LA Times, and that went all the way to the very highest court in the land before ultimately dying in a cloud of pandemic fog, which is something we could do a whole hour talking about, or not. I've already written a book about it. But it's definitely just sort of a reminder that, these people think they're editorially independent. There's no editorial independence unless you control, like as Mark suggested, the means of production. I mean, I'm not even kidding. Right. This show is an example of a completely editorially independent product. The only two human beings who have anything to say about what goes into it are you and I, and no one else. And so, like, that could change. Let's say we had a deep-pocketed sponsor who was like decided to come on and Clovis treats. The tat treat preferred by Clovis, and they're paying us $20,000 a month, which would be, by the way, very welcomed. So operators are standing by. But if that were to happen, we would have to listen to what they had to say. But if we're just like Bernie Sanders model, small donations, $5 a month on Rumble or whatnot, hit that subscribe button. This is a reminder that you can't. That billionaires are not going to save the press. Whether it's the Washington Post or anything else, like this guy, he just can't keep his fucking thumb off the scale. He owns a paper. He thinks that he thinks that he can tell what to do. And guess what? He's right.
Well, yeah, it's his personal paper. All right, one last quick story, because this one is very amusing. If have ever wondered why all the money we were talking yesterday, Ted, about space and it goes, where the fuck does it go? It goes to shit like this. What you guys are looking at here is the brand new NASA spacesuit designed by Prada.
Good. Looks awesome.
You guys hear me? Prada. The next time American astronauts step on the moon, they're going to be clad in Prada spacesuits featuring advanced technology and the brand's signature design elements. Axiom Space and Prada recently unveiled the Axiom Extravehicular Mobility Unit, or called the AXIMU, spacesuit at the International Astronautical Congress in Milan, Italy. NASA astronauts are expected to wear their new Prada uniforms during the Artemis 3 mission, the first manned trip to the moon since December of 1972.
That's awesome.
So that was pre-Manila. The AXIMU comes with a Prada-appropriate, eye-popping price tag. Ready? NASA awarded Axiom a $228 million contract to design the spacesuit as part of a larger $1.3 billion deal to develop technology for Artemis 3. Only 4 astronauts are going on this voyage. Well, yeah, because they can only outfit 4 of them.
They'll have some for you. They'll have spares in case they do in their uniforms. So you know what I'm
Oh
saying.
my God. Gross. The designs are, see, this is bullshit too. The designs are one size fit all, and it comes equipped with biometric monitoring capabilities and HD camera, 4G LTE communications, but we're in
I call
5G.
as a 6'2" American, I call bullshit on the
Exactly.
idea that you and I, Manila,
And
could
then
wear the same size uniform,
one size fits all Prada
spacesuit.
astronaut suit. Like, no, the suits are designed with enhanced protection compared to their Apollo counterparts, incorporating features specifically needed for exploring the moon's permanently shadowed regions in the lunar South Pole, or what
It's
people
very,
colloquially
very,
call
very cold there.
the
Yeah,
dark side of the moon, right?
yeah.
Which is really technically just the far side of the moon. But this should piss off taxpayers as well, because we're like, yeah, we want you to spend more money. You know, forget Elon Musk. Let's put it back in America's space exploration
I'm
team.
all
Put it
for
in
it.
NASA.
I'm
We
all
give it to
for it.
NASA, and what does NASA do? They go buy Prada.
I think. Look, honestly, have you been
They
to
go buy Prada.
Have you been to Italy? You know, their cops,
I have.
the state police there, they wear Prada
I know.
uniforms, and man, they look great. I mean, I reconsider my sexual orientation when I see those those Italian cops. It's like they look hot,
a lot
and
of
they're
uniforms
trim and
out there look
slim. They
really
look
good.
amazing.
And I will also say, Hugo Boss designed the Hitler's SS men's uniform.
True.
And
Italians
good
know
school
what they're
suits.
doing when it comes to
Just
design.
saying.
And like, I gotta just say, I mean, we gotta bring in our guests. I just want to say, like, honestly, look, it's very important to look good. I mean, what if we
In
make first
space.
contact with an alien species and they think we look schlumpy, and they're gonna
Oh,
be like,
okay.
fuck this place, we're nuking it.
Oh, all right. We're gonna leave that right there, because
Okay.
what do you say to this? Like, you don't want your astronauts to look shitty in space. Okay.
No,
That's
no, you gotta look good.
okay.
I mean, you know,
All right.
I'm partial
right.
to Prada suits, by the way. So I'm, you know, it's a little
I don't
bit.
know about these
I'm a little
Prada
biased here.
spacesuit. All right. I'm gonna do our quick little jaws before we bring in our guest to talk about a myriad of domestic politics, because there's so much good stuff to get to over the next 2 weeks. So we're running out of time to talk about them, Ted, or we can talk about them in perpetuity. But all right,
Yes.
hold on. All right. So as we transition over to our guest, I'm going to go ahead and pop him up here on the stage with us. If you've ever watched any of my previous shows, you might recognize this face. Look at that silver fox there. That is my old friend.
Hey, we're gonna have a
Jamie
fox off
Finch.
here.
I paid a lot of money for this color. So did you. It's called
Can't
life.
look good.
Yeah, we were talking
Jamie-
about like who did my. Sometimes I'm asked who does my hair, and I'm like, the LA Times was partly responsible.
I get that a lot too.
Odds in the gray.
Not the LA Times part, but yeah.
So for those who don't know Jamie Finch is a former NTSB official. He's an aviation expert, transportation expert, really. And so he's worked within the government for a long time, and he knows how the inner workings. So we thought we'd pick his brain a little bit about this crazy, as Bill Gates would call it, this very different presidential election cycle. So Jamie, just let's get top line thoughts. You know, you and I have been on air together many, many times, and it's usually about critically awful stories, like planes falling out of the sky, a lot of Boeing stuff. But I feel like the stuff that's imploding now is this whole political world that we live in. And it's crazy. You've literally worked inside the government for a long time. Now that you're out, when you look at what's happening, what do you think with this election cycle?
Well, number one, it's good to see you again, and it's been a long
Good to
time,
see you.
and always one of my favorite interviewers, and I mean that sincerely.
Oh,
You know, I finally got paroled out of politics and government a few years ago. In other words, it's just the Senate that you have in DC, and it's the general business. But it's very, very different from when I moved here 30 years ago to Washington DC to what it is today. And this is and the way it is today is one of the reasons why I completely left lobbying, and I'm now working to get my doctorate in occupational therapy, because I've changed careers completely, because it's just become so mean-spirited. vicious, angry. I would be on the Hill talking with somebody else from an opposite aisle, and then the other side, somebody would see me, and then they would come up to me after the conversation, and what are you doing talking to him? What are you doing? Why are you I mean, just like, are we in the 9th grade?
It's
I mean,
like
the 8th
high
grade.
school. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
You can't sit at his table.
Yeah. No, exactly. No, you have to wear pink. It's like, or whatever, whatever it was with the
Yes,
Mean
the
Girls.
Mean Girls. Yeah.
So, the way it was when I moved here 30 years ago, we thought that it was mean, but it wasn't mean. We hadn't seen mean yet. And a lot of the atmosphere is based on the problems that both parties have contributed to. Because I was always a centrist Democrat, and I have a lot of centrist Republican friends. And now the two parties are these extremes on both ends. And then you have all the people that are majority there in the middle that don't really have much of a voice. That's where your anger is really coming from. It's because I feel like none of this applies to me. And I don't know how me talking about, or you talking about some of these issues that are really extreme don't apply to my bottom line, to how I'm paying for my bill, paying my bills, my mortgage, keeping my kids a roof over their head, and sending them to school and paying for their college. And so both sides have gotten really focused on their counter issues that people aren't relating to. And bottom line, the one that we'll talk about, economy and pocketbook and safety wins.
Oh yeah. Oh my God. Safety.
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's say, we know what Trump's message is on the economy and safety. And, without going down the rabbit hole of whether or not those are realistic, we know what the messages are. I mean, he wants to do deportations. He thinks that would have a salutary effect on the economy by basically, in a very simple macroeconomic way, saying, you're going to get rid of the illegal immigrants or the migrant applicants, then you have a more of a labor shortage, and that's going to, improve wages and so on. Might also have an inflationary effect, and there are supply chain effects too. But and certainly he has a tough on crime message that I think resonates with law enforcement and people who you look at it from that point of view. But Kamala Harris has had trouble, I think, either making the case from a personal point of view, in making us get to know her personally. I feel like that hasn't happened, and there's any number of reasons why that might be the case. But also from a policy perspective, it really looks like, you're talking about. Let's just talk about economics and safety. What would be, it would seem like Kamala Harris would be tailor-made as a former prosecutor for someone to be able to say, I did this, I prosecuted criminals, I know what I care about crime and the victims of crime, that she would be able to make some sort of affirmative Democratic Party case on public safety. And maybe the economics is tougher because she's tied to the Biden record. And I think she, like most of the Democrats, have not been able to really articulate the difference between inflation and high prices. Inflation is lower and under control, but prices remain high and kind of have to remain high. If you had advice for her campaign, how would you tell her to frame these two issues?
Well, let me start off first of all, and I'm not a big fan of hers. I'm not a big fan of Trump's either. I think most people are not a fan of either,
That would be
per se.
Mm-hmm.
But let's remember this: she is really at a disadvantage, and like I said, I'm not a big fan. I'm not defending it, but what I'm saying is she's been put in a really unfair position. For her to be put in this position where she is running and picking up the mantle from Biden, who should have resigned months ago, because this is not something that just crept up on them. This was a family and a staff that were trying to keep their jobs and so forth, and they really had kept her in the back room all of his presidency. Think about it. When you had Obama's presidency, Biden was up. You saw him all the time. When Clinton was president, you saw Al Gore all the time. When Bush was president, you may not have seen Cheney as much, but you knew Cheney was there and had his hand involved in everything. Yeah, it was probably the way he wanted it.
Say the least.
Yeah, and so I think she's been put at a huge disadvantage, and I've talked to some of my Republican friends who agreed about that. But I think that what has happened has been the same problem that's happened with a lot of the Democrats over the last few years or the last decade, and that's this: they focus on these ultra liberal, crazy lefty ideas and ideas and ideals that are really not what the American public wants to hear. And rather than focusing on what they want to hear, like you just mentioned, talking about talking about her issues on safety and how she's been a defender and fighter for public safety, and also, you know, Biden's economic record is really not as bad as they portray it, and they have kept her in the back room and not allowing her out of it. So you never saw her except for in a very rare occasion. And
But
then
Jamie,
yeah.
So you're saying that from the people that you talk to here in DC that it's been Biden's administration to deliberately keep her back in the shadows, and it's not her by her doing of herself or her choice, right? But then when she does talk to the press, I mean, I just want to show this clip from last night's town hall from CNN. When she does talk to the press, if it's unscripted, she is full of word salad and nobody understands. Like this here, like this.
Well, that's
soundbite
why they kept her. That's part of
right.
it.
I wonder if
it's
that's
not,
why.
It's not they just don't like her. I mean, I think there was an assessment early on in the Biden-Harris White House, or maybe even when it was still a campaign in 2020, where they kind of decided, oh, this woman, she's not ready for prime time. We're gonna keep her under wraps, and we're gonna.
She was on prime time last night. So here's what he asked her about mistakes, and here's how she answered.
There's something you can point to in your life, political life, or in your life in the last 4 years that you think is a mistake that you have learned from?
I mean, I've made many mistakes, and they range from, you know, if you've ever parented a child, you know, you make lots of mistakes too. In my role as vice president, I mean, I've probably worked very hard at making sure that I am well versed on issues, and I think that is very important. It's a mistake not to be well versed on an issue and feel compelled to answer a question.
Is there
like, wait, what? Like, he asked her if she felt she's made any mistakes over the last 4 years, and her answer was to define what a mistake means and to say, I've worked really hard to brush up on topics like that. What?
Yeah.
Huh?
I mean, this is an experienced public speaker. This is the part that makes me like crazy, right? She was attorney general of the nation's biggest state. She was, she was a prosecutor in a very important American city. She was vice president. She was a U.S. senator. These are all jobs where talking and being able to think off the cuff are like literally central to the job, right? I mean, I could answer that question. It'd be like, I would say, you show me a politician or a human being who hasn't made any mistakes. I'd show you someone who's done anything. I make mistakes every single day. I try to learn from them. We all do, and we try to do better, going forward. That's what you say. It's easy. It's not hard. Anyone could do it.
Yeah. For me, what I see here, also having been a former staffer and worked on campaigns, political campaigns, presidential campaigns in the White House, this is poor staffing work. They are not doing their boss right. I mean, at the same time, it may be the boss that's not listening or willing to be trained. But, there are some basic questions that you have and can expect in politics, and that was one of them.
Yeah.
And why weren't you prepared for that?
That's a softball question.
Yeah, very softball question. I mean, I think even Anderson Cooper was kind of like shocked by it. Like,
I think she's an untalented politician. I think that's really it.
She is. I think she has worked her way into this in some kind of way, in her charm or whatever, into these positions. But I think that she is uninformed. I think that she has not participated in anything. If they were going to try to prepare her for running after Biden, either this time or the next time, is probably what they had in mind. They would have been giving her some roles and out there and some ability to be able to learn stuff. Now, Bill Clinton was a governor. Al Gore was a U.S. senator and congressman and senator. Bush was a governor. So these people have been out there and they've had practice and they've gotten out there. Now she was a U.S. senator too. You would have thought that she would have in one of the nation's largest economy states, that she would have won or gained some kind of skills on teaching or speaking and so forth. But she has not. But I just think that they rather than talking about her safety issues and her ability that she's been working on in safety, which may be actually kind of thin, and that may be one of the reasons why they're avoiding them. And they just really have not framed.
Also, is it really a federal issue? I mean, crime is really, I mean, it's local and state law enforcement, right? I mean,
that's what it is. It's like a local and state issue. You need to be connected with that. And these people are not connected with what, I just got back from Tennessee visiting my family. And I can tell you, after being down there, the economy's booming, everything's going great, but they'll tell you in a heartbeat, it's like, oh, the economy's so bad, and this administration, and we feel so threatened by those immigrants, those illegals that are coming in over here. I'm like, well, that's immigration's part of it. I'm all for securing this border as much as we can and getting this thing locked down, but we need immigrants, or we're going to wind up like Germany and Japan with a shortage of people, which we're well on our way for. And
which
also,
nobody's explaining. I've been talking about this for forever. I mean, the West in the United States is a classic example, has a fertility crisis. And why can't we have a person, I don't know, we could call them the Vice President of the United States, who could go on television and show some charts of declining birth rates, show like projections happen economically to the GDP and so on, if we didn't have any immigration. And we could explain to the American people, this is not about just taking jobs that Americans don't want. This is about just keeping the whole thing afloat as far as it is, and keeping it from getting worse.
Isn't that part of the problem, Jamie, is that we actually know very little about Kamala Harris personally? I mean, to Ted's point, if she wanted to, she could address the whole immigration thing and combine it with the birth rate bust by saying, like, look at me, like I worked so hard in my career, I blah blah blah, I didn't really take time to become a mother,
a town hall, bring a demographer, and bring a prize-winning economist.
But that would be a perfect opportunity for her to marry the two topics of like her being a career woman and not really having put time or effort or consideration to having kids. And this is why there's so many women, modern women like me, that don't have children, blah blah blah. This is why immigration is needed, and we need to fill these gaps in our economy. It would also allow for her to tell people a little bit about herself and show vulnerability, but instead she doesn't do any of those things. She's very guarded. She kind of chuckles about, oh yeah, I'm Jamaican, smoke weed, haha, funny. Or, I worked at McDonald's. She's very guarded about herself, when she could have if she had better staff around her, she could have very easily weaved some personal vulnerabilities in there and tell her it's okay to be vulnerable. But instead, I think she views the world and the stage as a prosecutorial stage, because that's the only time that she does well. When it's an adversarial, like when we hear the congressional hearings, when she's like, when she was like in her Senate committee attacking somebody that's there to give a deposition or whatever to the Senate.
She's a pit bull. That's
she
what
grills
she is.
them.
She's a pit
she's
bull.
Great.
I mean, town hall is a great example. If you ever look at some really amazing examples of a town hall and a gifted politician interacting with ordinary voters at the town hall, and that includes someone like George W. Bush or Bill Clinton, they would ask or Al Gore, they would ask the person some questions. They would say like, oh, so where do you work? Where are you from? Kids.
Engaging.
She couldn't do that. It was really, she's basically scared of the question. She's like a defendant at a deposition, like, oh shit, incoming. Well,
when you're a fraud or you feel like you are, you are going to be imposter. Thank you. I was going to think of the term. When you pull in. Now, Bill Clinton and Al Gore and George W. Bush, with their failings and so forth, they were authentic. People liked them. And likability is a huge factor in elections. And people forget about that. They're like, oh, it's about the issues. But showing vulnerability, you're absolutely right. That's just the way to go. I mean, it shows humanity. It shows I'm one of you, not like I'm above you or I'm going to lie to you.
That's what the Trump stunt, the McDonald's thing did. It's like, look, here's this guy. He's a billionaire. He doesn't have to be here. It's like, and you can tell he's having fun.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, he's also eating
never done
food.
anything like that.
I mean, by the way, I think he's likable. I mean, there's a lot of people who can't see past his politics. I think he's charming as shit. I think he's funny. I mean, I think he's. I mean, I totally get why people like him. I'll never vote for him, but totally, I get.
Yeah, and he does seem he is, as the Gen Zs would say, he's his authentic self. He's living his truth.
He appears to be. Yeah, maybe he isn't. We don't know, but it looks like he is, right?
I feel like it.
At least he knows how to fake it.
Well, let's switch to another thing. Speaking of Trump, so last night, former Democrat and now or presently independent, but as of last night, new member to the Republican Party, Tulsi Gabbard. Let's listen to her make the announcement down in North Carolina last night at a Trump rally where she tells the audience she is now officially gone over to the Republican Party.
And it is because of my love for our country, and specifically because of the leadership that President Trump has brought to transform the Republican Party and bring it back to the party of the people and the party of peace, that I'm proud to stand here with you today, President Trump, and announce that I'm joining the Republican Party.
She has an amazing voice, I just want to say. A great voice.
Yeah, so that was, I think people saw that coming, right? It wasn't, she left.
I smelled right wing on that lady from day one when she was in the Democratic primaries. And she couldn't stop talking about her military experience. Yeah. And I remember just thinking, like, man, that doesn't smell like a progressive to me. I mean, I always thought
she was never progressive, though. She was never progressive.
Well, people thought she was just because she was a lady with a streak of a great, like, goth streak of hair there.
Well, and she's from Hawaii, right? And she's like multi-ethnic, and so people, you want to think that, but. That gray streak, by the way, it was apparently, the story goes that her streak came from being a medic, a combat medic in Iraq, and the stress just.
That's what she said. She decided to keep it, and good for her. It looks fantastic, by the way.
I think it's cool.
Yeah, it's cool.
But here she is switching parties. Jamie, I've never seen anything like this in modern politics, to see the Cheney family.
Is Trump really, truly the candidate of peace when it comes to Gaza and Israel?
Right. Well, look, we've got the Cheneys with the Democrats. We've got at least a Kennedy and Tulsi Gabbard on Trump's side. I mean, I just feel like the world is flipped upside down. I don't know what to make of any of this anymore. This makes no sense to me. How
it's a realignment.
What is happening?
Well, if I might, I think what you're seeing here is the shift of people switching around from party to party, back, and switching over because the parties have become so skewed in what they used to traditionally believe. Now, I'm going to tell you something that you may not know. Melinda, maybe you know, I'm a registered Republican now, and I'm a moderate still, none the least. But the reason why I'm telling you this is not because is because I am one of those people that left the party because I was just sick and tired of all the kind of BS and mistakes and so forth. I'll tell you what made my change was when Hillary Clinton with that email thing came out, and I was so pissed because I'm like, they knew that they were going to be analyzing her, like with a microscope. And why would they even begin to do something? Do I think she did something wrong? No, not necessarily. But why would you even give them some kind of room? I'm like, that's the arrogance that you have that I'm just so sick of. Now, this was back in the late 2000s that I switched, but it was so right about the time Obama was coming in. But it was a different party then, and so that's changed. So now you're seeing people going back the other way. You've got Fred Upton from Michigan, who was the chairman of the House Energy and Commerce Committee. This is a huge committee. He was the former chairman. He's a former member now, and he just announced that he voted for Harris. This is on top of all these other people, the Cheneys and so forth, that are high-power traditional Republicans that have switched over. And so I think that you're seeing that more and more. But one last thing on the party switches and everything else. Trump got elected in 2016 based on the Democratic base. The Democratic base is what put him in. The rural voters, the union voters, and everything else, because these people were sick and tired of being lied to. They were sick and tired of being lied to over and over again by both sides. But this guy said he was coming in and he took over the party. I was in Cleveland the night he took over the party on the floor, and I was there. All the establishment people were like looking around like, who the hell are these people? I'm like, well, those are the people that just took over your party. Thank you very much. But
wow, that's a good point.
But they all, the reason why they voted for Trump is because this guy's he's saying he's going to go in there and stick it up everybody's ass that we hate. We're so pissed off about, and that's why we like him. Boom.
That's exactly right. He is a raised middle finger to the establishment.
Yeah.
I mean, right now I'm friends with a fellow journalist. She's as far left as it gets. She's a communist. She's a progressive. She was Bernie Sanders. She was willing to tolerate. He was almost liberal enough. Anyway, the point she texted me the other day. She goes, "I'm such a rebel. I'm really thinking of voting for Trump." And I was like, "Don't do it. He's just as bad as she is." But the point is, if she's going in that direction, it says a lot. The question here really was the calculus that the DNC had to make when they were figuring out how to do the switcheroo to put in Biden and run her was, is this a change election or not? And I think it's clear it is a change election. Therefore, in a change election, you want to be the candidate of change. Even though he was president of the United States for 4 years, Donald Trump is still 6 years old. He's still the change candidate. No, she could have chosen to be the change candidate, or the DNC could have chosen to make her the change candidate, but they didn't.
No, he still represents. He's the big orange middle finger.
Oh yeah,
he really is. One last topic, Jamie, I'm going to throw at you here is, and this is something that really annoys me, is that we talked about it in our headline section before you popped on with us. But it's basically the accusation by Trump that the UK is interfering in the American 2024 election. So let's hear it from Trump. Here's a quick soundbite. Let's listen to that, and then we'll react on the other side.
Donald Trump's campaign accused British Prime Minister Keir Starmer's Labour Party of blatant foreign interference in the U.S. presidential election in favor of his rival, Kamala Harris. The complaint cited a now-deleted LinkedIn post from the Labour Party's head of operations, who wrote that nearly 100 current and former staff would travel to the U.S. to campaign for Harris. Trump's team filed a complaint with the Federal Election Commission calling for an investigation into what it termed apparently illegal contributions from the Labour Party to the Harris campaign. British political activists have long traveled to the U.S. ahead of elections, which is allowed under U.S. rules. What isn't allowed is for these volunteers to make financial contributions. The allegations of interference in this case will hinge on whether the Labour Party covered any activists' costs. Starmer said that didn't happen, and Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner gave a similar answer when asked about this in Parliament.
Will the Deputy Prime Minister join me in applauding the brave Labour staff members who've travelled across the Atlantic to campaign against Donald Trump?
People in their own time often go and campaign, and that's what we've seen. It happens in all political parties. People go and campaign and they do what they want to do in their own time with their own money.
While the complaint could complicate U.S.-UK relations if Trump wins the election, Starmer has denied it would have any impact.
All right. For those who can't guess, I'm a little peeved by that because it's a personal thing, right? Having, worked at RT America for almost a decade, and I sat through this during the whole, Russiagate, Russia collusion, Russia, some troll farm bought, like 100 Facebook ads, and that's election interference. But when you have like dozens of like actual politicians from the UK coming over here to the US to stump for Harris, I know that's technically in and of itself not against election laws or campaign violations or anything. But when the money gets involved, when there's money involved, and that's the accusation here, is that the party was paying for these political activists from the UK to come stump for Harris, that could qualify as election interference. So I think Trump might have a case here if it turns out that there was money exchanged and, money changing hands from the party to come this way to support Harris. That could be a bad thing. But why is the mainstream media not saying this is election interference when there was no evidence of Russia collusion, but we heard about it for 6 years?
We still do.
Because we don't like the Russians. I don't mean to be a smart ass, but it's true. It goes back to the Cold War. It's like, it's like the Russians, who's always the bad guys in the movies? The Russians, so it is, I have mixed emotions about this. Number one, I don't really see that this is going to make that big of a difference anyway. And if what you go and do on your own time is your own business. And I have worked with people that have been from other countries that have come to work in our campaigns here in the U.S. They were Canadian, but but it's not
technically another country.
Technically another country. No insult to the Canadians. I love the Canadians. I love the Canadians. But the thing is, I want to point out that this is not something that we don't not do in the U.S. That to go over and affect other elections and campaign and do all these kinds of things. We try to pull our strings in the way that we want to. So I think it's a little bit hypocritical for us to be. If this was really affecting and having a huge impact on the campaign, well, hey, let's talk. And if this is a huge amount of money, hey, let's talk. But if we're talking about some people that are coming in and doing some minor campaign, but basically, I can tell you what happens a lot on these kinds of things. It's a vacation. It's a way. It is, you go do some campaign work, then you go out to dinner, you go drinking, do all that kind of stuff. I know because we've been there, and so it is. It's going to have a lot less effect than I think is being portrayed. But it is also something that we do ourselves in impacting and having an influence on other elections in other countries. So those are my thoughts.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah, we do a lot worse, I would say, Jamie, than sending a few people.
No, we overthrow the government. We kill the president and we put in the one we like better.
There's that.
We do not. I take great umbrage to that. I don't know.
I did a book.
I've seen the movie.
I did the book with a very provocative title called The Anti-American Manifesto. And I told my publisher I wanted to have like a addendum that's just written very small of every U.S. intervention and regime change in its history. And it got really kind of out of control. The page count, even like when we had it down to like a 5-point font, it was kind of like, this is going to be half the book. We have to trim this. It's like, it's too much.
Just at the end of it, just at a certain point, just keep going, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Like you get the idea.
Yeah. That's all you got to say. You guys get the idea. Like, we can go all across like the 70s and 80s in Latin America, right? That's we could say that's God. Allende and all. That's
pick up Philip Agee's book called Inside the Company. It'll tell you everything you need to know.
Yeah.
Or like the manufacturing consent, Noam Chomsky's manufacturing consent, right? Like he goes into detail about what happens in the 80s in Latin America, and for folks that don't understand the migration crisis coming from Latin America, it actually began like 40 years ago. It's not a recent thing. It began from 40 years ago from U.S. interference in their elections down there. So you don't like, those Latin Americans coming up to North America. Go back 40 years and then, we can talk about that. That's a whole different conversation. But I thought this was like a funny thing because it's like you said, it's that simple, Jamie. We don't like the Russians, but you have a few people up there, troll farms, unsanctioned, maybe not, maybe sanctioned, maybe unsanctioned, by the Kremlin, who knows? But we're talking about a few hundred posts on social media, and it was like, hair's on fire. The Russians are coming.
$100,000 to $200,000 in a $7 billion campaign. Not to mention, by the way, a lot of that same company, people always forget, right? They did a lot of pro-Hillary ads too. I mean, so it kind of was like it was a troll farm. That's what it was. It was a click operation. It wasn't about election interference.
Well, that's what scares me about. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, and let's not forget that apparently the Russians were also to blame for the BLM stuff and, like minorities.
Because they're amplifying, divisions in American society. That's the rhetoric. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure those divisions are going to come out one way or the other.
And that, to me, I'm sorry, as a minority, I'm going to say, like, we have our complaints and our bitches about what's happening, here in the US and how we live our daily lives. And it didn't take any of the Russians to let me know that this stuff was happening. It's stuff that we live through every day. And like I said at the top of the show, like I grew up in a like heavily, we're talking 80+% Mexican neighborhood near East LA, at the East LA border. And it didn't take the Russians to tell people in East LA that, there's all the kids joining gangs. It's because there's no chance to get out of that neighborhood. You're from a poor neighborhood. You just continue to stay there. And very few of us ever get out, right? The discontent was there. It didn't take the Russians to tell us about that. It was there. And so my point to this is that it takes, when the media says, oh, it's the Russians doing it, their election interference, they're, making all the minorities disgruntled. No, you're taking agency away from us minorities and our voice and what we actually see as reality. They're taking away the agency of us to speak for us, to say, oh, and they also get to blame the Russians, which, like you said, the U.S. government hates. So, it's a twofer.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's let Jamie go. Jamie, thank you so much for joining us. Always a pleasure. Great to see you again. Please come back again soon.
Yes,
Jamie Finch is a former National Transportation Safety Board official and an aviation expert. Thanks very much.
Thank you
so much, Jamie. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. So that's a whole nother topic. See, every time we get into these conversations, Ted, I get more ideas of like our themes of the show. Like we should have a theme show, a day of like the dumb minorities. Thank you, Rachel Maddow, for telling us what I should be angry with.
Well, she's a minority. She has short hair. I don't know. Maybe
That's
not.
it. That's it. The minority of people that look like Will Wheaton. The minority of Rhodes Scholars. That's it.
Yep,
that's
true.
It. That's it right there.
Poorly deployed Rhodes Scholars.
Oh boy. All right. So we're going to leave that right there. So we're going to say thank you all for tuning in, whether you're on YouTube, Rumble, I don't know where else. I mean, we're still figuring out all of our platforms. But let's remind the viewers that if you like what you see,
and listeners, we're now starting to populate out onto the audio streams. So if you can listen but you can't watch, you can get us on. You're going to be able to get us pretty soon on Pandora and
cool.
Spotify and all that stuff. It's starting to populate already. It already might be on, like it's already on our iHeart Radio, et cetera, et cetera. So it sort of spreads, and so go to your Apple's the slowest. It's going to take us a couple weeks to get approved there, But
I don't know how all that stuff works. So
yeah. Well, I've already, that's been my bailiwick, so I'm taking care of it.
Ted and the producer are taking care of that part because that is way over my pay grade. No idea. But I do know Rumble, and I do love Rumble. I love me some Rumble. So if you are watching from a desktop, you will be able to go into the chat. Below the chat where you would type in whatever you're going to say has a little subscribe button next to the $sign where you can become a $5 monthly subscriber so we can keep doing the show for you, and we can continue our work so we can stay fully independent. In order to do that, we have to rely on subscribers to help us do that. Or, as we said, the troll tax, the $5 troll tax. So you can troll $5. So if you want to do that, Putinbot Gaming will remove the hammer off your head and you can troll with some limitations, but that's for another day. And Putinbot Gaming, of course, thank you so much for supporting us with this little venture. Please go check as well. And on the thumbs up, the like, the follow, the subscribe. We'll be back here tomorrow for a fun Friday show. That's it. Ted.
Bye. I was saying goodbye to the Rumblers. Okay.
Oh, you were in the chat room saying bye. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's gonna do it. We'll see you back here tomorrow for a Fun Friday. I'm really looking forward to our day before Halloween episode because we've already got a cool guest.
That's true.
Lined up. Where we finally get to talk about the occult.
Ooh, and I even have the perfect cat for Halloween because he's like
a cat.
Slim and green.
I hope you're home by then. Jeez.
I'm home. I'm home now.
You're home now?
I'm home now. Yeah. No,
why aren't you in your normal room?
Well, it's a branding exercise. I was kind of like thinking, I like the plain background of, I think it looks better than like the clutter of like the boxes in my office. So I'm playing with this.
No, I like your home office, and then like they get to see a little bit of you, like they get to see a little bit of me behind me. Like that's LA. That backdrop is LA. Like that's the LA skyline. And then my random junk.
All right, I'll take that under advisement. I always think it's too.
What do you guys think? You guys can comment. Tell Ted. I like his normal home space where Clovis the cat comes climbing across his desk and we see his stuff.
Clovis
I like it.
He's busy right now, sleeping. I don't know if you can see him.
There he is. He blends with the couch almost.
Yeah, he does.
So you guys let Ted know. I say the regular background in Ted's home office because then we can see all his cool stuff. And Clovis likes to walk around. So anyway,
he does.
That'll do it for us. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Hasta mañana, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. Remember, like, subscribe, follow, all that good stuff, and tweet us out. So we'll see you mañana.
Thank you very much. Spread the word. Bye. Share us.